There are so many different things at the moment that are conspiring to go against them, and I just reckon privately they're saying to themselves, crikey, let's get this season over and done with and let's go away. Hopefully have a holiday everywhere and then come back and off we go again next season. And I know people are saying, well, why didn't you buy X in January? Why didn't you buy Y? But it wasn't a time to go out spending millions on football players for many, many different reasons, as we know. And also, that whatever you say about Jurgen Klopp, he's never bought a player, I don't think, just for the sake of it. And he's waited for players and waited, and he decided, no, some are too expensive. You know, some of the centre-backs, he said, no, not for me, I don't really want them. I'd rather take a chance with Kabak, people like that, Ben Davies, etc. So there ain't a great deal wrong with the club. I mean, everyone now, of course, has gone, oh, Steven's won the league with Rangers. And, you know, he's done a really good job. And in the 3 years he's been there, he's improved every single player, obviously, which has also improved the team. And they've won the league at a canter, mind you. You know, Celtic have self-imploded, to be honest with you. And they've won, I mean, I think Hibernian are 36 points behind Rangers and they're third. And everyone's going, oh, get Steven to Liverpool, come on, and all that. But it's very, very early for Steven to come back to Liverpool. And as we just discussed, I think Klopp will decide that by, you know, deciding to go if he wants. I know, you know, I just said to people today, people kept saying to me, oh, get him back, and I go, Frank Lampard. And they go, what do you mean? I said, well, Frank Lampard went to Chelsea. You know, the same kind of thing. He's an absolute hero at Chelsea and couldn't quite do it. And you've just got to be very, very careful. So I did a couple of radio things today, and just people were saying that, you know, when will Steven go to Liverpool? I said, well, he's probably got to win the league again next year as well, which, you know, Celtic will come back because quite often they do. And I said, and maybe he needs a couple of years in the Premier League, but not at Liverpool before he eventually goes.
It's funny, I did want to ask you about Gerrard. I saw you were writing about him on the BBC website as well. And you did raise that point about Premier League experience elsewhere. Do you think, and Rangers done very well in the Europa League as well, as you know, do you think, say, look, it's so hard to predict anything in football if this year has taught us anything, but say the next 2-3 years play out and Klopp's there for at least the next 2-3 years and Steven Gerrard stays at Rangers, and let's say he wins the next 2 league titles and does 3 in a row. Does that give him enough of a basis to make the leap to Liverpool, or do you think there is such a gap between whatever it is that, you know, Rangers are facing and Liverpool would be facing, that actually pitching in somewhere mid-table Premier League would be necessary?
No, I think if he did another 2-3 years and he won the league in the next 2-3 years, because you've got to imagine that Celtic are going to come back, and I think they're going to try and burst the bank for players and really push Rangers. And if he's still on top and he's doing extremely well in the Europa League and maybe even had a spell in the Champions League, then I think he could cut out the thing of going and managing in the Premier League. And also as well, then I think, you know, as a manager, and I did it a couple of times, but not for too long, but you learn stuff every single day, and you know, you just kind of think, oh, we're playing well and we've got it, and something happens and everything's a problem. And he needs to have a spell of that. And he probably needs to have a spell where things aren't going for him. Because I always think it's a bit like life, and people talk about experience. And I would always say, well, experiences is when all the bad things happen to you and how you deal with them. Not when the good things happen, because it's simple. But it's when the bad things happen, and you've got to really seriously think about a direction that you want to take, and you know, you've got to take all the players with you and all those kind of things. You might be fighting the owners. So I think if he has another 2 or 3 years doing extremely well up in Scotland, I think that would make a transition much easier.
I've always found Gerrard quite an interesting character, more complicated, I suspect, than maybe the media profile. Like he definitely had a weight on the world aspect to his personality at times, and he felt pressure. You said on the BBC piece I wrote, Steven is someone who's hugely impressive when you meet him. Well, I mean, it's kind of a strange thing to ask, because we've seen countless Steven Gerrard interactions and the media over the last 15 years. But away from cameras and doing interviews, when you meet him, what kind of fella is he to be in his company?
Just a good lad. He's although he doesn't have to be, very respectful to the old players, and he understands what they've gone through, etc. Absolutely loves Kenny, like everybody, like all of us do. But he gets it. He gets it on every level, and he's just very, very, very modest, but very, very driven. And I mean, if you remember, he nearly went to Chelsea, didn't he? And that spell at Liverpool, he was going. He'd spoken to him. I think he'd agreed absolutely everything, and in the end, he changed his mind. Excuse me. And I think he said to the chief exec at the time, "Do not ever put me in that position again." So he was going to go, and for some reason he had his head turned and he didn't go. And obviously, from that point of view, it was a bonus for Liverpool, certainly. So he's strong. When he was doing the under, I don't know if it was the under 16s Melwood or the under 18s, I'm not quite sure. But he was really, really strict with Curtis Jones, Joe. Really strict.
Right.
Because Curtis Jones came in and he had a bit of arrogance about him. Nothing wrong with that because he had the ability. But Steven would take him off. As soon as he did something wrong, he'd take him off. He'd sit down. He'd talk to him, and basically gave him tough love, which is not difficult to do nowadays. But Steven gave that to him. And I think if you talk to Curtis Jones now, he would say that Steven Gerrard, as his manager of the under 18s, he said he was fabulous because he could quite easily, Curtis Jones, have gone off the rails, gone off the track, down the track.
Right, very interesting.